Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Richard Clark, I'm Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I'd like to thank you all for coming out. We're having a public hearing tonight before the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board on the proposed large-scale water extraction ordinance.
I would like to show you that the ordinance that's being presented tonight, I have highlighted all throughout, is exactly the same as the Denmark ordinance. All of this highlights is copied. I would say, I'm being conservative, 80% is drafted from the Denmark ordinance, which is for large-scale water extraction.
Former Attorney General Steve Rowe has written a letter of concern regarding the effects of NAFTA on water issues in general, and the governor has signed a bill to create a commission to examine the legal and policy implications of groundwater extraction. And we've all learned that state law overrides local law.
This is not a business-friendly ordinance. The export of a huge volume of water for sale outside the district will, for all intents and purposes, severely limit what is left over for local businesses. But as someone trained as a chemist, a former consultant to the Maine Department of Conservation, and one who 20 years ago was making presentations on global warming, I can tell you that we cannot count on future water availability. Our only real option is to hedge our bets and maintain control over our water, and enact no ordinance that would tie the town's hands in any significant way.
My name is David Guernsey. I was the chairman of the planning board in Kingfield, Maine, some 5 years ago when we went through this very same process with Poland Spring wanting a large-scale water withdrawal. In there that has a copy of our town ordinance and the permit that we finally issued to Poland Spring. Rather than go over any of this, I'd just like to skip right to the two conclusions that really came apparent at the end of the process. Number one, when they came to town and asking for 200 million gallons a year out of the same aquifer that the water district was in, that got everybody's attention. And it wasn't until some way through the process when we did some figuring, and every acre up there gets about 1.25 million gallons of rain on it per year. So really what they were asking for is about the same amount that fell on their own land as rain. Now the hydrogeologist that we had sniffed at that and said that doesn't mean anything because it can run off or whatever, but it did put it into some context where people could get their arms around it a bit. The other interesting thing about groundwater is that the science is pretty well established. There isn't much opening for speculation or subjective comments. We had our own hydrogeologist, the water district had their hydrogeologist, the state DEP had a hydrogeologist, and Poland Spring had an independent hydrogeologist, and they all pretty much agreed on any substantive issue. There really was not much dispute at the end of the day on the water withdrawal aspects of it. The last thing I would like to say is that Poland Spring was very professional throughout the whole thing. They reimbursed the town for any expenses we had as they were required to, but there were never any disagreements on that. When we had disagreements, differences with the planning board, and we certainly did have some, they worked with us to resolve them, and they were all resolved satisfactorily at the end. And since that time, we gave the permit in 2006. Since that time, they have been very generous in donating to all sort of town functions, and I've included one example on that letter where they were the biggest contributor to Kingfield Days. Although they're not in the tourism business, they've got no direct interest in this, and frankly I wish other industries in the state of Maine were as generous.
Jack McKee, I'm from Kingfield, and in the meantime I served on the Board of Selectmen, chaired the Planning Board, served on the SAD 58 Board of Directors, on the State Board of Education, and 17 years as what I call a non-technical consultant to the Kingfield Water District. So I was intimately involved in this and all the other activities around the water district over the past few years. Kingfield Water District relies on a aquifer that is fed by 43,000 acres of drainage area. And as David has just told you, it more than suffices for what we need to do. Poland Springs' initial contact with Kingfield was through the water district, as you might expect. They spent time with the water district trustees, explained their objectives, their goals, told us about their operation, and the possibility of extracting water from the aquifer was described. The firm's representatives advised that quantity and quality had to meet state and federal standards, of course. Now, the trustees were naturally concerned about the impact, but to address both the quantity and the quality issues, Poland Spring proposed drilling a series of test wells in the prospective extraction area, which they did. Now, the Kingfield Water District is advised of each and every action taken by Poland Springs in that activity. We knew when every well was going to be drilled, we knew where it was going to be drilled, we knew what the results were. They funded a hydrogeologist to be retained by the Kingfield Water District to follow along on every step of the way. And as David has told you, that process continued all the way through the end. Poland Spring also assumed the cost of the Water District retaining an attorney in order to help us work our way through any difficulties we might encounter. I could give you quite a list of what they did for the schools, the elementary schools, the kids in the schools, and he mentioned the Kingfield Day, but they also supported us in other ways. The Pops concert we always have. Was a major contributor to a program that my church sponsored last year, raising funds for help those in need for fuel oil. Never did I find them heavy-handed or obstructionist. Quite the contrary. I found them to be understanding of our town's concerns and committed to maintaining the quality and integrity of our little town, of which we were justly proud. And I must tell you right here, I left out, and I want you to know, we were named for the first governor of the state of Maine, William King, and his residence was built there in 1821. It's still there, and it's still being used as a residence. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity, and we respect Poland Springs, and we're glad to have them as a firm and as personnel, as members of the King.
My name is Dana Lee. I'm the town manager of the town of Poland. I'd like to thank the Wells Select Board and the Planning Board for an opportunity to make a very brief statement. As town manager of the namesake town for Poland Spring Water Company, I wanted to share our experiences with water withdrawal regulations and with the company. I do not intend for my comments to interfere with your local governance and regulations, but I did feel compelled to reach out and share our story in Poland, Maine, as you work to create an ordinance that will protect your water resources and keep wells open for business. Our experience with Poland Spring and with the state regulators who oversee their water withdrawal has been nothing but positive. The company has been extracting and bottling water in our town since 1845, and they are still there today. They draw water from a spring source that recharges very, very quickly. There's been no drop in groundwater levels, no local homeowners or businesses have run out of water, and nearby wells do not go dry. Unlike some other towns in Maine who host Poland Springs, ours does not operate under any local extraction ordinance. We rely solely upon the state's regulatory bodies, which we have found to be very rigorous. Poland Springs' monthly monitoring program is overseen by the DEP, as you know, and all of their data is therefore publicly available. Because of this constant monitoring and public disclosure, our aquifers have remained safe, healthy, and clean. Despite what you may have heard, Poland Spring Water is an outstanding community partner and a great business to have in our town. The company is renowned for their contributions to multiple local causes, including the schools, fire and rescue, heating assistance, cultural activities, and recreation programs, to name but a few. Recently, they donated $10,000 to our Winter Wellness Fund to help with heating oil. Poland Spring employs 350 local people.
Sir?
Yes.
My name is Ed Swift. I have lived in Wells for 17 years, and I'm a mechanic for Poland Spring. I have worked locally here for 14 years before working for Poland Spring. I have attended the community college here. My son attended school here since kindergarten. I am also a property owner, so I have a stake in this town. I do care about this town, its environment, and its future. Tonight our community is considering a large-scale water extraction ordinance. I am not an expert on water extraction regulation. I have read the proposed ordinance, and I believe it addresses any legitimate concerns the citizens of this town should have. Water quality, sustainability, pollution, extensive monitoring, infrastructure, noise, hours of operation, and truck routes are all covered under this regulation, along with avenues to address problems that may arise. I have worked for Poland Springs for 3.5 years and have seen firsthand the many benefits Maine communities with similar ordinances have reaped. Hollis, where I work, Denmark, and Kingfield, to name a few.
That are doing that aren't from our town, that they would sign and certify that these comments were their comments written by them from their own experience and not prepared for them by any other entity or corporation.